This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The opinions expressed in this episode are not to be construed as medical advice.
Welcome to Demystify Beauty, a weekly podcast about creating transparency in the beauty space. I'm McKenzie Westmore.
And I'm Dr. Paul Nassif.
How are you?
What's going on? I haven't seen you since, God, it's been a while.
It has been a while. Yes.
And I'm excited because, listen, I hear about this famous icon and your dad, and of course, your mom. And so it's exciting that we're going to get to hear more about this because it's interesting. I've been on, some sets before with some celebrity friends of mine, and I watch some of the makeup and all the weird, crazy stuff they do.
Right.
And so this is very, very interesting. But anyway,
no,
so
it
I'm
is
excited
very
about this.
I agree. And I'm personally excited because it's my dad and he's my hero and I'm a daddy's girl. So just letting you know now. But I'm so thrilled that my dad is going to join us because this is where I think he's going to have a great take on the combination and where Hollywood and makeup meets plastic surgery and everything in the beauty space. So let's introduce my dad, Michael Westmore. Hi, Dad.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, son.
Everybody call him Dad. You've now been adopted, Dr. Nassif.
That sounds good. I don't have my dad anymore, so it's nice to have another dad.
Well, now you do. Now you do. So, Dad, why don't you just jump right in? I would love for you to discuss, your beginnings and the family's lineage, because there is so much rich history here that will tie back into everything Demystify Beauty.
My family history goes back quite a ways. My grandfather in the late 1800s was a wig maker, and he went to the Boer War in 1900, actually, and was Winston Churchill's barber. And then he left. He had a wig shop after the war. After the Boer War, he came back to England, and he had a beauty shop where he made wigs. Not so much a beauty shop because the skincare and makeup wasn't as big then. So in 1906, he moved to America. My grandmother came the year after with the boys who were the famous Westmores through the golden ages of Hollywood. And 1917, he opened up a wig shop down in the Hollywood area. And finally, come around the 1900, he talked Clara Bow into letting him do her makeup, and it all worked out that because everybody was doing themselves and changing, putting mustaches on upside down, whatever. In fact, there was a movie I did with Marlon Brando, and he wanted to take care of his own mustaches, and they went up and down and short and long. It was The Ugly American, it was called. So grandfather then brought the boys in, my dad, my Uncle Perce, my Uncle Ern, Wally, Bud, Frank, and each one of them ran a major studio. And then we went into the talkies, which is interesting because it was up to silent films, much closer to that period. My father was known for, I'd say for each one of them, I'll give you just a movie as such. My father did Gone with the Wind. Uncle Perce did The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
My
did a
goodness.
movie called Cimarron, and he was the first one to win a trophy for makeup. And it was,
I have
he
it
did
still,
all those
Dad.
makeup that were all done with grease. And then there was Wally, who did Hunchback of Notre Dame, not Hunchback, Jekyll and Hyde. And then Frank did 10 Commandments. So each one of them, through their careers, at least did one big movie. And there's probably, including the third generation, there's my two brothers, myself, the 6 of us, 7 of us, 8 of us, did a couple thousand films that we have screen credit on. So we've been in Hollywood, a long time. And then little by little, it all, passed on. And third generation, Mott and Marvin and myself carried on. And I've had a very lucky career. Starting with Rocky. I was at Universal, but that's what really kind of launched me into recognition. Between that and Raging Bull, and I won an Oscar for Mask. And I love doing television, so I have 42 Emmy nominations and 9 trophies. So I've been busy, but I've actually
Jesus.
enjoyed, I want to say, the creating of it, not so much thinking of winning something and putting something on the shelf, but just creating and designing, of which I was probably the luckiest person in the world to wind up on Star Trek for 18 years. And I don't know
Oh
how
my
many
goodness,
hundreds
Star
of
Trek.
aliens. I had to have a new alien or more designed for every show. And there were 600 and some episodes between 1987 and 2005. So then I basically retired from carrying a box to the set, but just I've enjoyed lecturing. I've been lecturing on cruise ships. And tomorrow, in fact, I'm introducing the movie Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde at the Ted Turner Classic Film Festival in Hollywood. So it's, and that kind of scares me because then I wasn't there and I had to learn things of what my Uncle Wally actually did for the film. And he was only 25 years old when he went into Paramount Studios and took it over for the next 40 years. So it's...
So I get a question for you. I'm a little confused on something. Okay, so your father and how many brothers? Were 6 of them total?
There were. Yeah, actually, my grandmother had 18 kids, but only my dad and Purser, Ern, Wally, Frank, and Bud, 5 of them. And they've got more.
So I got to tell you, that's a record right there, 18 kids.
Yeah.
Right?
My God, that sounds like a Guinness Book of World Records. Jeez.
Yeah. But we have just as many wives, though, to go with each one of them.
There we go. So now, with that, then from the second generation after that, how many of you from your dad and his brothers, how many of the kids went into doing what you do?
As far as makeup goes, in the third generation, there's my brother. There's 3 of us, Mont, Marvin, and myself. And then there's a 4th generation with Marvin's kids mainly, which I just heard one of them recently about my Uncle Bud's boy wanted to go into makeup, and Uncle Wally's boy the uncles didn't want them to go into makeup, so they never did. So we're the only 3 in 3rd generation.
Wow. And are you still doing it now?
I do
actively.
No, it's actually, between all those wonderful things you get at 85, having to do with your eyes, hands, and everything else, I talk, and I learn. I'm just, as I mentioned, I've got this wonderful lecture and a screening of a newly adapted version of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with the 8 minutes that were cut out of it in the 30s. It was called the Producer's Code, where it took all the sex out of it. So 8 minutes of sex was taken out of the original, and it isn't Dr. Jekyll. It's Dr. Jekyll, not Jekyll. Of which it surprised me because I was watching the movie and they kept calling him Dr. Jekyll. So I bet half the audience or more of them won't know that fact tomorrow.
So, Dad, I want to dive into a little more of the Hollywood side really quick before we mesh worlds. I know you get asked this a lot. I think I've asked it to you before, and you're always like, "Oh, why are you asking me this?" But who was your favorite person and your least favorite person to ever work with?
I love that.
I say, my favorite person, I think, was Elizabeth Taylor. She treated me like a son or a brother. She grew up across the street from my Uncle Wally. So my cousin and she grew up together and were very good friends. So I had to go on an interview. They called me for an interview with Elizabeth to see if, she liked me and would things work. So I drove over to her house, and it was Beverly Hills of Brentwood. And we sat down and we talked for a few minutes. And the next thing she's saying, "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow morning." It was, and then I stayed with her for a while. But she treated absolutely everybody, from it would be the President of the United States on down to somebody getting her a cup of coffee, exactly alike. I mean, it was amazing.
Beautiful.
She was amazing.
We were working on a film one day, and she says, "What do you want for lunch?" She says, "I know, let's get Chasen's from Chile, and I'll chop an onion up until it gets here." She was that type of a person. She just loved doing things
Wow.
herself, and she's such a respected lady.
Okay, so really quick, Dad, what color were her eyes for real?
Mm.
And I actually looked into it. It's hard to say. I don't know, like a brightish blue. There may be a hint of purple in them, but colors that
Hmm.
we wear reflect into
Hmm.
the eyes.
It's like,
And this
yeah.
is what my dad used on Gone with the Wind, where she was wearing green most of the time. And so everybody kept saying her eyes were green, and they weren't.
She had hazel eyes,
Yeah.
Vivian Lee.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who was your least favorite to work with?
Well,
Oh, there we
I
go.
He
had
hates when I ask
two. I
this.
had two. But I want to say uh,
I think I know one.
Betty Davis.
Yeah, I
Betty
knew it.
Davis. In fact, um, it got to the point where I didn't even want to work with her anymore. So I told my wife, if she calls, tell her I'm out of this country or something. So when I was on Star Trek, Marion would call me and say, "Guess who called?" And then I'd say, "Would you tell her? No, you're not available. You're gone." So it was it, the whole thing wound up. She went on a talk show. The last time I worked with her, she went on a talk show, and it was with Brian Gumble. And he was asking her questions about a new book her daughter just wrote. And she kept saying, that damn daughter of mine, no, the daughter wrote the book. That damn daughter of mine had asked her a question. Well, Betty, you just won this giant award. And what about that? Nah, that damn daughter of mine. So, oh my God. When it was over with, Brian came up to me and he says, "Did you understand the show?" And I said, "No, not at all." He said, "Well, I'm never going to interview her again." And I said to him, "If you're not going to interview her again, I won't do her makeup again." And we shook hands on it, and neither of us have.
That is crazy. And wait a minute, was it just she was difficult to
Just,
work
I
with?
want to say, going on in the years, and probably, just falling apart or something.
Well,
But
wait,
she,
really quick, because hold on, Dad. The story I remember you telling was that same interview. You did her makeup, and she looked in the mirror, and she's like, "That's not how I'm supposed
I
to
have,
look." And
yeah,
didn't she?
no,
Yeah.
the story McKenzie's talking about, and I actually did this on the cruise ship one time, was that Betty looked in the mirror after I had her all done, and she had her stroke, so I had her eyebrows balanced out and everything, and the lipstick and rouge, and she looked into the mirror, uh, and she liked to get made up in this dark room at her house, which was a pain because she had a beautiful sun porch right outside. But she and um, took a black pencil and made Bozo the Clown things on one of the
Oh,
eyebrows. And I'm going,
Jesus.
"Oh my God." And I said, "Well, which one of those rings do you want?" She says, "You pick them out." So I had to take away two of the rings, and then I added this other one on the other side. And she goes, "That's right." She's literally doing a makeup from the 40s, 30s, and 40s
Oh,
on herself.
no.
And then she always says, "I don't have enough color. I want more rouge." So I gave her the rouge pot, and she scrubbed on the rouge pot, and she went like, "This is Baby Jane. She's
Oh
making
my
herself look
God.
like Baby Jane." And she goes,
Oh
"Yeah,
my
that's
God.
perfect. I like it like that."
Oh
And then
no.
then me, and I was getting overscale money for this, and she was basically in a wheelchair, and I'm pushing her in to the television station and everything, and I can just imagine everybody looking at her, and I'm trying to hide under, hide behind the cameras and everything. But that was the last time I did her, and that was what it wasn't fun.
Now you said two. You said two. There was one more you were going to say.
I don't know who I said it.
I know who it is, but
It's in my book.
yeah.
And in 2017, I wrote my memoirs, and I did put it in the book. And on things like Betty and him, I'll give you that clue. It's
Him.
just I had to rewrite things, and as vicious as I was in the beginning, I had to tone it down.
Oh, but that's why I love you, Dad. You tell it like it is. So I want to bring the worlds together now because Dr. Nassif, even you crossed paths with my dad in the waiting room, but he was there through my whole surgery and everything that I went through. But Dad, after seeing me go through everything I went through, what is your take on plastic surgery, Hollywood? How do you feel about how the worlds have combined, and do you think it's for the better, for the worse? Like what is your take on it?
I think plastic surgery is fantastic. Um, I don't know if Dr. Nassoff knows this. My brother and I had a salon in on Wilshire Boulevard where we did post-operative makeup for plastic surgeons. Dr. Ashley, if you remember or knew who he was the plastic surgeon to the stars that literally was able to do 4 women at one time. He had some really good men working with him at the time, and it was an amazing operation that he had going. But he asked me to do a lecture at one of the plastic surgery conventions, and I did. And after that, I literally took care of some of his plastic surgery patients at the studios because there was bruising going on and redness and some of the. I remember one woman who's bruising when she had her face done that it went all the way down her chest into her breast.
Down the chest.
It was amazing. And the woman wanted to cover it up. So my brother and I, using studio colors that we've used for correcting makeup, correcting problems with on skin, that we opened a little shop, as I said, on Wilshire Boulevard, and we started going to the plastic surgeons conventions and lecturing there and meeting the doctors, and built a business where they were sending their patients to us. And there was a Dr. Goyne who used to send us a lot of patients. It's like he included in his in the part of the operation, and it finally, we built ourselves to the point where we should have gone into product color and selling these products, because doctors saw what we were doing and started having their nurses setting up little things in their businesses and had their nurses doing the makeup. So we kind of got out of it. Besides, I wound up getting a little film called Rocky, and after I finished Rocky, I didn't want to go back into that, so my brother Marvin kept that going, but I went back into film at that point. But there's a real combination of beauty with cosmetics, especially for post-op in surgery, because there always seems to be something that doesn't go away overnight, but can be taken care of. As soon as the doctor says you're healed, stitches are out and everything, go ahead and cover it up. And there are so many different combinations. I said we were using, I want to say, the beginnings of corrective coloring to color up all the problems we had going. So there's so many things on the market now that it's actually mesmerizing. I don't know if there's any artists that are still exclusively working with plastic surgeon patients or not, but it's just overwhelming, the number of colors, the yellows that can do away with redness, and
bruising.
green is actually, these are the actually skin tones that have been used in paintings for years. And I started doing this at one point. I looked at a Rockefeller book, that big post book that he did of post covers, and I took a giant magnifying glass and started looking at the skin tones, and I started seeing colors in there that we just didn't have in makeup, and I had colors made up. So when I was doing horror movies or old age makeups especially, that I started using all these little colors in them. And today, these kits that come, and it'll be old age kit, and all these different colors of mauve and grays and things like that you can find in the skin, the makeup artists are using today. But as I said, as far as the combination of makeup and plastic surgery, I mean, it's a natural, because almost every woman in the world wants to, the reason why she went for the surgery is to look better. And the makeup is like the cherry on top of the sundae to make it look even better. And I think every time somebody would
That's a
come
good
in
way to
and do
put
a
it.
makeover like that, they were thrilled. They were a whole new person, because when you see some of the befores on them, they had just let themselves go, and they were depressed and everything. And it was lovely to see them really, the personalities change when the doctors have finished their work, and the makeup artist and a hairdresser can make a woman look great. My Uncle Perce had a show on television years ago where they used to take a woman out of the audience. Of course, they didn't have the surgery, but just to do the makeup and hair would totally change the lives of some of them.
to do a makeup. I mean, Dr. Nassif, I know you see that. You saw it in me. I'm sure you see it in many people. You see the personalities change once you've done your magic as a surgeon.
You know, I'll tell you one thing after listening to this, and I empathize with everything your dad's saying here. And the first step, usually when these patients come in that you were talking about from the old days before surgery, they were really making all the difference in the world, especially you take someone who recently got divorced, lost their job, had some family issue. Just doing this really brought them out. And again, over the years, finally it took place where a lot of the folks, especially the ladies, weren't embarrassed to say they had plastic surgery. And it does transform their lives, like we've seen on my show, Botched, with your nephew. Matt's your nephew,
Yes.
right? Matt Westmore.
And Mary and I are big fans of the show. We've seen them all.
You know, there you go. I love hearing that. Thank you. And,
We all are.
And the thing is, I've noticed that when you take someone and you can fix something on the face, but then the icing on the cake, when you make their skin look better, it really does so much, you know, with a little bit of makeup, of course, without overdoing it and, you know, caking it on, looking natural and beautiful. It accents so much. And when we talk about the bruising, as you were saying, you know, especially for a facelift, and you have a little bit of bleeding underneath the skin in the neck, yeah, that's really a dark purple. But then as it settles down in the lower, you know, in the lower neck and upper chest, how it turns the green colors and then the yellow colors. And to actually take that face and do what you guys do of blend it in. And it's interesting. There are people that do that now, but I did not know that it started years ago when you guys were doing post-operative makeup. By the way, what year was that you first started doing the post-operative makeup?
It was in the early 70s.
Jeez.
Wow.
Got over 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow. That is just insane.
And that's interesting. You know, we didn't do it. I mean, now they're doing their permanent makeup, scar camouflage and all that stuff. But it's interesting, after all this time, that 50 years later, they're still doing it. And it really hasn't changed much in regards to what you were doing back then.
Now, I want to jump back really quick to one thing that does tie into plastic surgery. But Dad, I've always wanted to ask you this, and I've never even asked. But from your knowledge and working with Michael Jackson, that's a big one. He was a big one, and you were up close and personal with him. You were right in his face. In fact, by the way, to this day, I still hold a grudge that you took Michelle over there to see Bubbles, and I never got to go. Just saying.
That's right. What's your question?
Just what was your experience with Michael Jackson, and was that, I mean, you were there through some of the plastic surgery that he went through. I mean, did you see the time when he was getting a little out of control with things? I mean, what was your take on that?
No,
'Cause I always found
any
it so
time I
fascinating.
had with Michael, he was wonderful. And the reason why I got called in, and another friend of mine, Ziggy, who was a wig maker, was that Michael lived on Havenhurst in Encino, and he could not leave his house. Across the street, people lined the wall over there. And so Michael had a little VW car, and he wanted disguises. So between Ziggy and myself, I built some noses, and I was actually, and as far as teeth go, I was trained by John Chambers, who was the man that got the Oscar for Planet of the Apes. John was a dental technician before he became a makeup artist, and he taught me how to make teeth. So I made all the teeth for the Klingons in Star Trek for 18 years.
Oh my God.
I made different kinds of teeth and different noses for Michael. And then Ziggy made all these different wigs for him and things. So he could jump in his little VW, drive out the front gate, and people thought it was somebody else. He's just, I mean, he was a gentleman and a wonderful guy to deal with. And I got to see his zoo and his candy store and everything that, you know, at the house. It was just, I didn't see any side to him except, you know, a really wonderful side.
That's amazing. I always wanted to know that side of things. And were there any other celebrities that you worked with that you felt, I mean, obviously maybe nobody that's around right now, I don't know, but anybody that you worked with that, how do I put this kindly, was so obvious with their plastic surgery, but was not vocal about it. It's probably in your book, which, by the way,
No,
is The Makeup Man.
no, I don't. Yeah, there were, but I don't think I didn't put it in my book. It wasn't. I mean, you could tell from the scars behind the ears or somewhere,
Right.
or somewhere in the back of the little scar in the back of the neck where the neck was pulled back and things. So, I mean, I knew where all the scars were hidden because Marvin and I had to deal with so many of the ladies in our little shop where we helped them. But no, it's. I don't think it was as popular when we first started doing the makeup. It hasn't grown to where it is today, where it's
Yeah.
so acceptable. I mean, where people will come right out of
Right.
surgery and call all their friends to show them the bandages or something.
Go right on
Yeah,
Instagram.
it's not a big deal. I think it's in some people that I've seen where you see the before and you see what the doctors have done afterwards. And it's like myself, I had my eyes done many years ago, and I had this eye was literally drooped for myasthenia gravis, and it was all pulled up. And Marion had her under eyes. She had a family history of bags or females on her side of the family, and she went and had it done, and it was like it's like you feel so good when it's done, and you can turn around and look in the mirror, and just you see the total face change on people. A very good friend of mine, Bob Barron, who was literally the man that was the disguise man for the CIA that traveled the world. And
Yep.
we're friends now. Bob and I are still friends. And Dr. Nassau met him. And
Yeah, of
the
course.
people
Great
that
guy.
Bob helps, and mainly children that had deformed ears or lost their ears. And to see
Yes.
some of the movies and things they photograph when they're Bob's doing that, and to see this look on anybody's face when they look in the mirror that, oh my God, I've got an ear. One guy wanted ears done
Yeah.
just because he wanted to wear glasses and he had nowhere to hang them. But it's the same way as what the results that Bob were doing is what Dr. Nassau does and the other plastic surgeon is they just give people back not only an inner feeling, but being able to walk outside and feel better and more confident in themselves. So it's I think it's wonderful, all the results that you see from the surgery.
You know, it's interesting after hearing these stories, and we're learning about really how things were back when you were doing it. But McKenzie, let's talk about her for a second.
Okay.
When do you remember her getting interested in following your footsteps? But McKenzie, correct me if I'm wrong, you never did TV makeup at all. So how did
No.
all this get started, from the both of you? I'd love to hear that.
Well, for
really didn't
me,
know it
on my side of it,
That's when she was older.
you did it.
Go
No,
ahead.
and that's
Oh.
a funny thing. Yeah, I'll tell the story
Yeah.
because my dad didn't know this until I got older. But I remember there was an article that came out on my father, Dr. Nassif, where they called my dad the last of the living dinosaurs. It was the cover of LA Times. And my dad was the last one to do the sketching, run the rubber, run the foam, do the application. Now it's very compartmentalized in the makeup world, where you have somebody that will sketch it out, you have somebody that runs the lab, and then you have somebody else that does the makeup on set. So I was a teenager, and I remember seeing this article come out on my dad, and my heart broke. And I'm looking at my dad, and I'm looking at the family history. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, I can't let this history die. I got to figure out how to carry this on. I didn't know how. I knew I wanted to be an actress. I was singing, I was dancing, I was going to high school for performing arts high school, but I didn't know how. And I started to take makeup classes, actually. I did start to learn the trade. I could turn myself into a man like nobody's business. I could lay a hair lace wig, a beard, and I learned how to do all that. But
Jeez.
it never really grabbed me. And one day I did go to my dad and I said, I feel bad that I'm not carrying on the family's legacy. And Dad, I remember you telling me, don't feel bad. You follow your dream, follow your heart. My dad and my mom always supported me in becoming an actress. So then I got passions and I thought, well, maybe this is how I'm going to carry the family name on.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was, but then that went down. And then Dad and I worked on Face Off together. And that's really when it clicked in my head of, okay, Passions went down without any notification. I'm on a makeup show with a makeup dad, with a makeup family. Why am I not starting a makeup line at this point? And that was the birth of Westmore Beauty for me. And Westmore Beauty is really where I feel it's carrying on the Westmore lineage. And this is really for my dad. Everything of Westmore Beauty is for my dad.
When did that start? In other words, when did you open up your line?
Westmore Beauty?
Yeah.
Gosh, about 8-9 years ago. But my dad had a line way before that. So that was also an inspiration to me. A lot of what he did in his own cosmetic company. Because interestingly, Dr. Nassif, I don't know if you know this, but my dad launched, I think, on Home Shopping Network, Dad?
Yes.
Yeah, on
Oh my God,
on
how
HSN.
funny.
And the day he launched was the exact same day Princess Diana died. So as you know,
Oh,
with Home
God.
Shopping,
It didn't help sales.
sales
Oh.
were... I was his model for Home Shopping Network.
Oh my God.
And I'll
I
never
can't believe
forget
that.
us going back to the hotel room going, oh my God, this is horrible.
What was,
This
what
is
was
the
interesting
end of it.
though, is that we went for 3 days selling. And for the first 2 days,
Mhm.
I had a hostess with me that didn't give me really much time to explain what the hell we were doing. She just kept talking and talking and talking. Finally, the third day, something happened where she couldn't come, and you went with me, and you became my hostess, and we sold more makeup that day than the other
Yeah.
two.
Because I let you talk.
Yeah.
So basically, you've been in this whole home shopping, TV shopping, McKenzie for a long time,
Yeah.
and then with Dad, you started doing it, right? Do you remember how long ago was that?
That would have been, well, what year did Diana die? I think she died in 1997.
Did you?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I
Oh
mean,
my
yeah,
God.
you
So
figure
it's been a long time.
it's
That's
been a
right.
long time for me, especially like being in the home shopping world and now transitioning over to QVC 8-9 years ago. But it's been fascinating to watch my dad throughout all this and to see all this go on.
I get to, it's interesting when we hear this, because you have everyone out there doesn't really know about Hollywood, how it started, especially you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but Mike, where were you born? Were you born in Los Angeles?
Yes, in Hollywood.
Okay, here's the question. You ready for this? What hospital were you born in?
It could have been Hollywood Presbyterian.
Isn't that
Yeah.
funny? Hollywood Press, yep. Because I grew up in Los Feliz,
Oh,
Hollywood,
Here we
and
go.
I was
Three
born in
Valley.
Good Sam, Good Samaritan. Good
Yeah.
Samaritan, because you're an Angeline too, McKenzie.
Yeah, Valley Presbyterian.
So it's rare that we have all of this, I mean, when you were doing your makeup and stuff, when it came to plastic surgery and beauty, one of those beautiful actresses did have something done by some of the famed plastic surgeons. Obviously, they were hiding it at the time, correct?
mm-hmm.
And no one wanted to mention they had a facelift to their eyes done. None of it was ever public, was it?
No, it was like a big secret. All of a sudden, you took 20 years off your life, and how the hell did you do it?
Yeah.
It's just because there was always some way to disguise with hair in particular any of the surgery around the forehead, in front of the ears. The men it
You get to see 'em.
was a problem, but I would assume that they just kept hidden for a few weeks, but then we had makeup that we could disguise it with. Then
Well, it's interesting with the makeup then on that. Forgetting about plastic surgery for a minute, but I have a lot of patients that will come in with dark circles underneath their eyes. And those dark circles, you can't really treat them with a laser. Sometimes it's due to hollowness, or they just have the pigment in their skin.
Mm-hmm.
When the patients or my customers are here and they put makeup on, usually it looks not great. So for some basic things, are there some easy tips for makeup application that you can give some advice to our wonderful listeners?
Well, in applying things around the eyes, and at first I know they had little sponges that came with them, and putting the sponges off, but the warmth of your hand and having a cover color that has, now in the olden days, in fact, they probably still have it in some of the newer things, castor oil. because castor oil has a stickiness to it
Yes.
that will blend out. But it's a matter of padding around the eye, like your product, McKenzie, that you have.
Shadow edit.
Yeah, the shadow.
Yeah, shadow edit.
But it's being able to pat it in there and blending out those edges a little bit. And even with your color, can't you put base over the top of it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was designed for that. It was designed for dark circles. It
You
edits
block
shadows, and because that's
you block out even with bruising and things like that, it will work.
Yeah.
But it's usually the warmth of the fingers and by patting these things and getting away from them, and no powder. As soon as you put powder in it, it starts to it gets crepey around it. But it's simple to do and it's quick to do, and it's not something that needs to be played with or not. This isn't going to get it on or doing this. It's that stippling.
No, you find the fingers actually help the dark circles better than a brush?
Well, the reason why I like to use my fingers is because my fingers are warm.
Ah, okay.
I could put it on with a brush to begin with, to maybe take the brush and get it painted on. But as far as taking it and smoothing it out.
The warm, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, McKenzie, for example, I'd never been a big fan of a lot of makeup on anyone. I like more that natural look with some accents of makeup on.
Right.
Especially, when they have great facial features. And, my wife, Brittany, she, in the beginning when I first met her, a little bit heavy makeup. And then, interesting, after we talked about it, she's gone less and less makeup because she's a beautiful woman. To me, less is more. But now, for someone like you, of course, you have a gorgeous face. And your makeup you put on your face, since, again, your face is the face of, Westmore Beauty.
Right.
Do you consider yourself putting on a light coat of makeup, a medium, or a heavy coat of makeup? And I don't know if I'm using the right words.
No, you are.
Yeah.
But
No, you definitely are. It's the level of coverage. I find for me, it all depends. I'm very much like Brittany, where I've gotten to be less and less and less, especially since, we went down our journey, Dr. Nassif. It has become a matter of, for me, things like my shadow edit, because I do have dark circles. And as everybody in your office has told me, there's nothing that can be done for that. So things like shadow edit have been my absolute go-to. And that's one of those products where I'll just dab it on because you don't need to chase it with other makeup. So you can spot use it and on any skin tone and it blends right in. So products like that, I prefer a very light layer. It's for me, I do have a preference towards less is more. I always like to play up my eyes because that's a feature that I like to play up. But I do prefer the less coverage. It's just more comfortable. And that's always been my thing with Westmore Beauty. And this is why a lot of men like to use it, is because it doesn't look like makeup, but it gets the job done.
Westmore, where less is more.
Very good.
There you go. Hey.
Oh, I like that.
I'm going to write that down fast.
Okay, so let me ask you about red. Patients come in with rosacea. Rosacea is more of an adult onset of acne, where the sebaceous units of the skin, they become vascular and you get all these little blood vessels, chin, cheeks, nose, and maybe a little bit here. And then they get these broken blood vessels all over the nose, especially the corners.
Yeah.
Now, again, how do you treat the nose with that red, again, without layering it on too deep?
Well, you have to cover, whether you take a little brush and go over the red areas, the green areas, and go over it with your foundation. But it might be a little heavier on the nose to be able to cover it. But then the idea is not to keep going with that, with the heavy makeup, is to start to thin it out a bit. And we had to do that. Of course, we used pan stick in the studios, and we were able to get away with making it a little thicker. But again, it's a matter of just thinning it out when you get into nice, clean skin. It does work, and I've seen it done.
Now, Dad, didn't you use different colors? I know certain colors will cancel out colors, like Dr. Nassif is saying.
Yeah.
What was the color that you would use to cancel out red in your time? What was the color you would use to cancel out bruising? What are the different colors that help cancel out these things?
the main color that was put out was, I want to say, baby poop yellow. It wasn't bright yellow.
Yellow.
It was a yellow that had a touch of brown to it. I mean, a
Huh.
minute touch, but it's the yellow that cancels out the red on it. And I know on the when things start getting green and blue, sometimes you had to put more of an orangey, not red, but an orangey color. I had on Robert De Niro on Raging Bull. He had a panther.
Oh boy, what a
A
movie!
panther from his shoulder to his elbow, and I had to cover that with an orange, literally an orangey base, and then put makeup over the top of it. But when you see, he could have walked on the street and you wouldn't have known, because the thing is, after it was applied, I would maybe pat it with a little uh, oil or something just to give the skin a shine. And that's the thing, is
Glisten.
once you put that stuff on, the makeup, that you don't want to leave it, powder it and walk away because it's flat. If you do powder it, you could take a little sponge and take off any excess powder. Um, it's you have to put life back into it again, and then it pretty well disguises everything.
I like that. You just told us something, of course, a new pearl, a new tidbit of information that none of us knew before, is that De Niro has a large tat of a panther, all the way down. You said from his shoulder down to his elbow?
Yeah. One of those ones.
A panther?
One of those ones that's hanging on to you.
So why would understand that? Why did he
I
do
have
that?
no idea. It goes way
A
Of course, I didn't know it
panther?
until we did Raging Bull, And it's like,
Oh God.
and the first
So-
time I saw it, I'm going, oh shit.
So you didn't ask him. So that's another question I'm going to ask you about celebrities. You dealt with some of these biggest celebrities back then in the world. A lot of them are still huge celebrities. Some have passed away. In general, correct me if I'm wrong, the bigger the movie star, and maybe I'm wrong, besides like you mentioning Betty Davis, are they nicer? The bigger they are.
I would say no. Because, Elizabeth,
Okay. All
charm,
right.
wonderful. And then you run into Betty Davis, who's a monster. But it was just my Uncle Perce did her for 32 of her films or something, and he used to make her up when she was naked. And one time she said to me, because she was mad at me, she said, well, you're not like your Uncle Perce. And all I could say is, thank God. I hope she keeps her clothes on, Yeah.
Oh my God. But in general, with some of
it
these,
depends on the person. It depends on
darn,
depends how they
man.
I
grown
know.
up. There's so much to it. Some of them are total gems, and other ones I tell you, the ones that don't get a chance to work on the stage. When actors have a stage background, they've learned to work with people and be with people.
Yeah.
Ones that come right out of acting school and want to be, I want to be a movie star, they can wind up with little quirks to their personality.
That's very true. Yeah.
And those quirks can go from just a little bit of stupidness to a, total jerk.
How was De Niro and how was Stallone to work with?
Sly came, well, we had so much fun together. It's like the person you see now was kind of like a mature person that he grew into. With me, again, we were really close on the set from the first day Rocky started, and we were in Philadelphia, and his wife at that time and his big dog Butkus was there with us. We had a little teeny trailer, and it was like Sly had some music on going and stuff, and it was like the four of us busted out of his trailer going, yay, and I was with Sly for 8 years, and I would say every all the way through, we were really, I mean, say close and understandable. I knew how he worked, and he hadn't, vice versa. De Niro was much more quiet. It wasn't where he had his friends. He respected me for my talent, what I was doing for him, and and he trusted me when we were like putting his noses on for Raging Bull. I took the barber chair and I would crank it all the way back, and he'd go to sleep while I did it, and it was nice. It was like working a doctor working on an operation. With my brushes, leaning over the chair and putting and gluing the rubber down and making them all up. And then I'd wake them up and it was time to go to work. And then standing by with them all day long and just keeping them touched up. But he was very busy. Roberts, he had such a closeness with Scorsese and with Joe Pesci. And he does things, they would do scenes over and over. So we're not worried about a social life going on. It was my social time with him would be making him up if he was awake, or during the tests coming to the house. When we were training for Raging Bull, he kept coming over at one point, and he was playing with McKenzie as we did all the makeup tests at our house in Studio City. And all of a sudden, one day he goes, well, I'm thinking about he went to Marion, using McKenzie in the movie as my daughter. And that's how she got her card in SAG. McKenzie played his daughter in Raging Bull.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Did I know that? Did you tell me? Yeah, you did tell me that.
Yeah, if you go back and watch the movie and you see the little girl that's next to the pool. So yeah, that's how I got my SAG card.
Yeah.
Oh my God, how
but
funny.
And then
thank you, Dad.
At the end of the night, I'd clean up Robert, and he had his nose on things, and he would get a shower and wash his hair, and we would get in the car or the bus, and we would be driving downtown Manhattan, and he would say, let me out here. And he's such a chameleon that he could, with his hair all messed up and everything, he could jump out of that car and walk into the crowds on the sidewalks of New York, and nobody would turn around and go, oh, there's Robert De Niro. He would totally disappear. So it's like our social lives didn't. With Sly, we were a little bit more punching together. I don't know how many times I got punched in Rocky. He liked doing that just with me when I was standing there. And people would say, is he mad at you, or did you like that? Isn't he hurting you? And I'm going, nah, who cares? Because I got him back. I had squirt bottles, and I just had to keep sweating them down all day long. So they're two totally different personalities.
God, that's interesting.
So wild.
Hey, McKenzie, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So when you found out how to carry on his legacy, and the makeup that your dad had, and again, I know times change and maybe images changed. Did you take his makeup as a base and modify it, or what? Because you said he was doing makeup back then. You're doing makeup right now. How different is it?
I took it more as an inspiration, and even down to things like my cousin, for example. She did all the makeup, and they did the body. I mean, she wasn't that. She's one of the people to do, and Dad, it was Candy, did Baywatch, and so it was things like that part of the family, and even Dad talking about having to cover De Niro's tattoo. That it was stories like that inspired me to create the body coverage perfector. Because that's something that will cover a tattoo, and it's waterproof, and it's sweatproof, and it lasts for 4 days. But it's
Jesus,
like ridiculous cover. That's why it wins the award every year for best body coverage, because that's what it does. It covers bruises, tattoos, you name it. But the fact that it's waterproof, sweatproof, transfer-proof, and lasts up to 4 days. I've had it last a week because I've gotten the application down to a T. Things like that. It's the family history really inspired. Everything you see in Westmore Beauty is an inspiration of the family legacy. Everything my dad did, like he was saying with Shadow Edit, that really is a combination of taking all those color correctors and combining it so that you can cover up rosacea. You can cover up dark circles. You can cover up everything. Red, blue. I mean, it really is like a magic little pot.
Mm-hmm. And makeup also changed. Up until the 50s, no, into the 60s, pan stick was the only
Yeah.
thing everybody used. And then somebody got the bright idea. They started changing the film stock, making it more technical, and people started to use liquid base instead of grease base. Today, most everybody uses. I don't think anybody uses grease base anymore. It's basically the liquid bases, and that's what McKenzie's was. In fact, her makeup was I want to say so sheer. You had color, but it was so sheer that on Face Off, I wore it, and especially on the backs of my hands because I could put it on and buff it out, and it just was a little bit of color. I wasn't white.
Covers all spots.
I was beige or tan.
So, Dad, what advice do you have for up and coming artists?
Well, there's you need to know what you're doing to begin with. And the way you learn is go to school, and you have to practice. I had an apprenticeship that went for 3 years. So I basically was practicing for 3 years. I spent 6 months on beauty, literally watching Sandra D get made up every single day and bringing her coffee. Then I was out on my own. It was my first line to kind of meet your mother. My first line was, "Will you marry me?" And the second line was, "Why don't you come in the morning and I'll do your makeup?" So it's a matter of practicing over and over. And when I did Rocky, Sly wanted me to only make him, and I said, "No, I want to do Talia too," because I enjoyed doing a beauty makeup, a good beauty makeup, as well as I did gluing a nose or a monster together. But so it's having to go to school and having to practice. A lot of people learn one time how to do something, and they go, "Oh, I know how to do it," and then they go out and they do terrible jobs, because of it. You've got to keep practicing on your friends. I even practiced on my mother, anywhere I could, just to get the feel
Like
of
me.
what it's like to put the makeup on the applicator, put it on the face, and blend it out. As far as rouge goes, eyeshadow, doing eyebrows. I mean, every single step on the face is a technique, and it has to be learned proficiently how to do it. And so there are a few schools, but you got to be careful because there's areas too that want to charge you a lot of money, and the people that are teaching really aren't qualified makeup artists to really do it. So you have to look at where their background is from. It's the same way when a woman goes into a department store. Look at the lady that you're asking advice from, and if she looks like hell, run, because she's gonna tell you what the hell she's doing on herself. So it's you have to be schooled and you have to practice, and then you have to volunteer. You can go to junior colleges and say, at the stage productions, or people have, which you can meet through combinations at colleges. They make small films, and just to be able to volunteer to do the makeup on those small films just to get experience. One of the first jobs I had, which wasn't theatrical, I went to University of California, Santa Barbara. And when I walked into the theater department when I was a senior finally, and I told them who I was because I was going away on an apprenticeship, that they said, "Great, we're doing 3-penny opera." I said, "Great, so you can do the makeup." I had 32 people to make up every night for that.
Oh my God.
Jeez.
3 hours ahead of time, the actors would come in.
I know you don't have social media.
Yeah.
But I just want to let everybody listening, watching know that The Makeup Man on Amazon, phenomenal book. That's my dad's book. Tells you all the stories, all the good, the bad, the ugly, the dirty. So there it is.
Well, there he is.
There it is. So everybody go grab The Makeup Man on Amazon. But again, I know you don't have social media. I actually end up answering most of the questions people have for you on social media.
I spent 14 years writing it. So when Star Trek started to finish up, I literally sat down with a pad of paper and a pencil and spent 14 years trying to think of stories. And I still have more of them that I forgot to put them in the book.
Oh, boy.
Daddy, thank you so much for joining us. This was fun.
Yeah, this has been, I got to tell you, this has been something that, hearing about this one, learning about makeup, hearing about you and your stories. I do want to actually read your book because that's interesting. It's old Hollywood. I mean, it's new
Yeah.
Hollywood. It's
Yes.
everything.
It's everything.
Yeah, it's a lot
And,
of fun.
I mean, this is McKenzie. This has been fun.
This
I
was
mean,
so fun.
I
Thank you.
remember now what Instagram for you? What is your best Instagram for everyone?
My Instagram is M Westmore. That's also my TikTok. My Twitter's McKenzie Westmore, no E, and then Facebook is McKenzie Westmore.
Mine's Dr. Paul Massive. I have so many people there
Yes, you do.
that say, hey, we're a doctor. I go, no, they're all
you're-
fake ones. That's why the verified one. I'm brand new to TikTok. I got to figure out. I don't even know what my handle is on that yet, but I'm
I
pretty
think you're
easy to
Dr.
find.
Paul Nassif MD. I think you are.
Oh, there we go.
Because I
Well,
remember
thank you
being
for
in the
helping me.
I remember being in the office and talking to the girls about this, saying we got to get Dr. Nassif on TikTok.
Well, listen, it was great having you, Mr. Westmore. And
Thank you,
I got
Dad.
to tell you, we got to have you on. We got to hear some more stories.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I'll send McKenzie next time she's coming over. I'll send a book with her.
Oh,
I'm
yes.
coming
I
over
love
soon.
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll be seeing Dr. Nassif soon.
All
So
right.
I'll grab a book and bring it.
All right. We'll see you all next week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye. Thank you for listening to Demystify Beauty, produced by Gotham Production Studios. If you have any questions for future episodes, please don't hesitate to reach out to us on Instagram at DemystifyBeauty or email us at demystifybeauty@gmail.com. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. See you next time.